Ladies and gentlemen, we have a power-packed group of guests for a roundtable discussion on the coronavirus today. Before we get started, we're going to just touch on some numbers. The total confirmed cases, according to Johns Hopkins data, is exceeded 1 million in the last 24 hours at 1,066,000 plus. The U.S. accounting for a quarter of those at 258,000. And the global deaths at 56,000 plus right now. The current headlines are that Governor Cuomo said that the state saw the biggest one-day increase in deaths and that they're now redistributing medical supplies to hospitals because the need is coming when they will be overwhelmed shortly. Additionally, we have the markets failing once again today, and very excited to start this discussion with our guests. We have Leah Shaper, my partner at the Oppenheimer Ranch Project, my partner in crime, and the inventor of the n1oil, Todd Kleckner. How you guys doing? Can you hear me okay?
Doing good. Yes, Diamond, can't hear you.
Doing quite well. Can definitely hear you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you guys for coming on the show. Now, I want to start the discussion with, hopefully you can see this. I'm sharing the screen. I know there's a delay, but here's the live update and the talking point that most people are talking about now. Over half of humanity is currently under lockdown. The climate is changing because of it. And now we are now debating the use of masks in order to walk around the earth. The dystopian world that we once thought would never happen is here. And I want to know what your general thoughts of our two guests is on the facts on what's happening right now, the reality of right now. And why don't we start with you, Leah?
I think it's a little difficult to assess the reality of now. The data that we have data, but it seems like garbage data, especially when I look at numbers from country to country. The rates of infection are all over the place. The mortality rates are all over the place. I mean, unless we're dealing with a virus that has a lot of pretty big effects, it's really hard to make sense of these numbers. I mean, the numbers largely reflect the testing rates, right? So, if we're not testing adequately, then it's impossible to know how accurate these numbers are. There's under discussion a lot lately is the fact that, China is probably dramatically underestimated. I mean, it's something we've been discussing for quite a long time, but it's now something the governments are discussing as well, because the numbers that people are seeing in other countries have far surpassed China. It is very hard to understand exactly what is happening. And this whole thing about that we're now debating the use of masks, this to me is completely silly. I think it's been pretty evident from the beginning that people wearing masks could reduce the rates of infection pretty dramatically, but we were very busy telling people not to use them because we knew we didn't have enough, which is not a good excuse. It's better to tell people to be prepared and make their own masks, which is now something that's being discussed. I feel like overall the whole situation has been handled really, really poorly, and it's so unfortunate that we don't have better data, because that would really let us know what's going on. So that's where I think things sit at the moment.
Todd, what are your thoughts now
I
that
agree a lot with that.
1 in 4 people who get the coronavirus may show no symptoms? This paper, I have it pulled up here. Presumed asymptomatic carrier transmission of COVID-19. This woman spread it to everyone in her family, and she never had a symptom. So what are your thoughts about the dystopian future, Todd, and asymptomatic spread and the use of masks?
So I think masks, you should use it. Use anything that you can put as a barrier between you and the air particles that are around you. There's no harm is going to come from you. I think we've misinformed or kept the reality from the people, like Leah was saying, is to preserve what PPE equipment we do have for healthcare and to solve their supply chain first and then the people. I think we look at like that one anime Nausicaa, where they live in a pollen world and they can't breathe in this pollen or else they die. You know, the air is toxic basically on their land. They live in respirators. We can either choose that, or we can choose to find out what percentage of the population can become immune to this, and we suffer the consequences of those who can't. I really don't like either version of the future with that. You know, and there's other possibilities that are talked about, and I don't like their outcomes either. You know, just nothing about this has a really great future that I'm looking forward to having my kids go through.
Okay, excellent. Thank you guys for chiming in on that. Now let's turn it over to some of the more conspiratorial thoughts, because that's kind of where we're leading here. Is it possible that the money funders, the powers that be, are simply using this outbreak, which was inevitable, maybe or maybe not, as a way to adjust the markets? Because our markets were so overinflated that a crash was coming anyway. And are they now using this like a chess game as just a piece to blame it on the virus, that the markets are collapsing, and that and more as a readjustment to a more globalist society? What are your thoughts, Leah?
It's very tempting to think that that's the case. The trouble I have with it is that it's hard for me to wrap my head around what is the advantage to the powers that be to collapsing the market right now, or collapsing it in on purpose in general. It's hard for me to understand. There's so many consequences from the market crashing. I don't get it. Maybe I'm missing something, but I do think that it is true that a collapse was inevitable, and maybe collapsing it now reduces the damages. I'm really not sure.
Todd, what are your thoughts?
I can see different ways it works out for these multinationals and these oligarchs. Can also see how governments benefit from this. I know the Shanghai Exchange Organization, one of China's big, it's the organization behind the new Silk Road that China's pushing across the globe right now. Their most recent meeting, I believe a couple months ago, they were making plans to start exchanging and trading with its neighbors, Russia, Pakistan, maybe Iran, and a few other countries here in the near future, all in local currency and not using the US dollar to trade. So that fits along with this concept I've heard for the last couple of years, where there are powers in the world that are trying to destabilize or bring the world off of trading in the US dollar, getting rid of the petrodollar, as it said. This could be a step towards that. It could be a step towards one world government, you know, but I'm with Leah where it's kind of hard to see who's the victor here, and who's really pulling the strings. I mean, we have almost every country in the world right now agreeing about putting their people in lockdown. This is absurd. And so who's pulling the strings? You know, this is whoever's at the top of this, whoever collectively is agreeing and forcing people into this, a pretty amazing group of people. I would like to know who that is.
Yeah,
you know,
well,
is it the Bilderbergs? They were canceled.
I have a paper up here from the New England Journal of Medicine, and the author is Bill Gates. Responding to COVID-19, a once-in-a-century pandemic, ? Now, Bill Gates is the author of a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine. Can we, Leah, what are your thoughts on that?
I find that pretty ridiculous. There's Bill Gates has no business publishing in the New England Journal of Medicine, or I should say the other way around. The New England Journal of Medicine has no business publishing Bill Gates, but it really does not have a full-on medical background. I mean, I have to think also maybe that, you know, if you crash the economy now, perhaps the advantage to those in power is that it creates further dependence in this population. Maybe that's really what it's about. If you hamstring people economically as well as lock them in their houses, you have taken a lot of control away from the population in general. So, yeah, I'll just leave that there.
Todd, what are your thoughts of Bill Gates authoring this article in the New England Journal of Medicine?
I believe it was 10 years ago he authored something. I don't believe it made it into a medical journal, but he was promoting, some sort of depopulation plan or concept, how that might benefit humanity to go through such a thing. I don't know. I've had my own problems of trying to get published in journals that I'm not credentialed for, as they say. So I'm not totally against someone outside of a field trying to publish, but, if you got to be a millionaire to buy your way in to get published, then you can write whatever you want at that point. It's not really about what you're saying. It's about the money you're providing whoever. Or something more, maybe the journal is run by people who are part of the same group of futurists that Gates is belonging to. I'm not sure. I don't trust the guy. I don't trust his solutions, even though he has been dealing with viruses for over 20 years.
Yeah, agreed. Simply because of the strange coincidence of Event 201 and the pandemic preparedness for coronavirus and then the outbreak at the same time, that raises an eyebrow, to say the least. And so does the coincidence that about 3 years ago, I told my audience that we could expect a pandemic moving into the next grand solar minimum because of the cosmic ray levels increasing and the facts that we know that there is evidence that there are viruses entering Earth's atmosphere from space, and that these times, and now we couple that with the waning magnetosphere. What are your thoughts, if any, guys? I'll start with you, Leah, on the cosmogenic environment that we're in and this pandemic happening at the same time. Go, Leah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I mean, maybe 10 years ago, I was doing some reading about pandemics and, came to that understanding that we have been overdue for a worldwide pandemic for quite some time. And that's been pretty well documented. And it's something that folks were definitely concerned about. But I didn't realize until, you and I started talking about this that cosmic rays as well as grand solar minimum may help bring about pandemics, and this just makes sense. You shift the temperature of the Earth just slightly, and you do change the conditions for biological life on Earth. So it only makes sense that you may have a pathogen that would suddenly emerge in a way that is much more productive than it could have emerged in different climatic conditions. So some amount of illness, I think, is unusual illness is to be expected, I think, with changes in climate. And then, of course, we have cosmic rays, which can induce mutation. So that may be another part of the equation. And maybe, Diamond, you and I have been talking recently about the possibility that there are, and I'm sorry, this has been discussed among epidemiologists as well, that there are multiple strains being found. I think Iceland found something like 140 strains of this virus. So these are small changes, small mutations. I don't know how that compares to a similar virus that has extreme spread, that amount of mutation. But it's probably a good guess that with cosmic ray levels where they're at, that may increase the rate of mutation. In which case we may have more people getting sick than might normally from one particular virus. simply because it's a little harder to gain immunity to a virus that's shifting rapidly. So this could definitely be part of the effect here.
Yeah, so the number of mutations according to Iceland is 40. The mainstream is currently using the number 8 as mutations, and there is even suggestion and a paper, and I'll swing this over to you, Todd, that this coronavirus, the COVID-19 example, the novel version, may have been circulating in humanity for over a decade or up to a decade, and it's only recently mutated into this virulent form. What are your thoughts on that, Todd, and the cosmic ray connection?
Yeah. Well, I think on the space weather is really, I think it's more than just cosmic rays. I see 3 different ways that the genome in biology is affected through these energies. So we have the cosmic rays, which damage and change parts of the DNA. You have low magnetic sphere of the Earth and Sun. The magnetic field strength is much weaker around us right now. And then I believe that plays into the stability of DNA in itself. And then you have also documented electron fluxes and having the large genetic changes during high electron flux events. I go through a lot of that on n1oil's science site. There's a lot of peer-reviewed papers that I go into about how cosmic rays and magnetosphere and the electron events are affecting that. Far as the strains of this particular version of the coronavirus, I think it really kind of shows some of the science literacy that a lot of us have, and I've had to catch up on in my own life. It's always changing. And so most of these changes are not going to be beneficial for the virus. Most of the genetic changes that we have as humans and evolution, as we call this, are not necessarily beneficial. They're just mundane, not even noticeable. Sometimes it makes it a little more stronger. And if we're talking about a pathogen, it'll be stronger in a pig than in a bat or in a human. So at some point, the randomness is going to strike, and then we will have something that's going to affect us, a pathogen, bacterial, viral, something known, something new. Because I got to imagine we have a very small percentage of the viruses that are here on the Earth currently mapped out. I mean, we're still finding bugs and mammals and all sorts of critters that we thought, we have it all mapped, and now we're finding more. So we don't really even know what the baseline is to work off of. Is this thing new? Is this old? Has it just recently started getting into humans and causing a problem? All viable issues. We will see more and more of this breakout. And then also, if we're playing around with this stuff in the labs, if it's not just America, but China, Russia, who knows which countries have level 3 and level 4 genetic labs. A lot of universities have these things. Stuff's going to escape. At some point, if it hasn't already, it's going to, and we're going to have to deal with those as well. So whether it's from our lab or it's coming from space or it's being mutated, by the changing electrical environment and magnetic environment, it's in our future, And there's also a comet coming. There's lots of anecdotal kind of stories throughout history of comets and disease coming together as well. And we have one coming up at the end of the month here too. So that's why I made n1oil, because I don't see it going away, and I don't necessarily trust the chemicals that they're going to be coming out with to protect us, or the availability of those chemicals all the time. So I'd like this, and in one, it's more than just killing and protection. It also has some healing stuff. If you get into knowing those sides of it, it's just good to smell. Luckily we don't have bodies everywhere and stuff I don't have to smell, but I enjoy it. I enjoy this. I've made actually some incense out of it here recently, and those are quite delightful.
Yeah, so let me jump on there, Todd, real quick. And the Comet Atlas, is going to make its closest approach here in 4 weeks, which is corresponding to the exact time when we should be peaking with this virus worldwide. So the serendipity is crazy. Let's real quick end the podcast with some positive thoughts and some solutions moving forward. So, Leah, what is it we can do moving forward as we enter this dystopian world in the next 4 weeks, where we'll probably be mandated to wear masks simply to be out in public, and our movements will be severely restricted. I imagine state borders will stop traffic at some point, and this will be ongoing for the next 4 weeks. What do you suggest to the public, the ways they can protect themselves, mind, body, and soul, and maybe prepare for the times that are coming?
Well, certainly the advice to stay at home, I actually think is pretty good advice. I'm actually kind of getting to the point where, while I completely acknowledge that this virus is certainly dangerous for older people and sometimes for younger people, I think that don't be scared, because your chances of dying from this are still very, very small. I mean, it's possible, but it's pretty small. So I still think that staying at home as much as possible is a good idea, and limiting your interactions with other people. I know that, we've been, not afraid to go out if we need to, but we are, let's say I want to go grocery shopping, I make sure I sort of have my full list of what I need right now, rather than taking multiple trips to the store and just limiting the amount of time that I spend there. But more importantly, and maybe most importantly, is to eat well. I mean, whatever you have to do to eat well, do it. If you've never been growing food, start growing food in window boxes in your apartment. Do it now. Just grow some greens and eat them. Maybe you can boost your immunity, some with herbs. We have a PDF that we put out about ways that you can boost your immunity with herbs and supplements. You can utilize n1oil to boost the let's say the cleanliness of your house, and don't neglect things like exercise. If you have to do it inside, do it inside. But meditation and exercise, because the well-being of your mind will have a lot to do with your body's ability to cope in the event that you do get ill. So just focus on maintaining your health. Make some smart choices about when you go out and how you expose yourself. And I think that's about what you can do, is to just take care of yourself.
Well, thank you. We appreciate that. And also, if I could chime in before Todd, you finish up here. I don't think that there's really going to be a food supply issue or shortages, so to speak, moving forward. What I think is the biggest problem is that the majority of the population is going to be limited in what they can purchase. They're not going to have any money. The amount of unemployment and people that are running out of money is epic. And those people aren't going to be able to buy anything. And those are the types of people that should be growing food on their windowsills. And Todd, what are your thoughts on this?
I think growing food's a great idea. If we're not going to have shortages in food, we'll probably get to the place that I think you're speaking of, where we get rations, and we're told you can have these 4 items, this much of it for this amount of time. And that's fine. They'll keep us alive, thankfully. But we want some variety. Like Leah's saying, greens are really key to health, cellular health, keeping those energized and ready for the fight. I would say get yourself a good, strong antiviral tincture, and different immune supporting tinctures. Focus on your vitamins A, B, D, C, and zinc. These are all great for keeping the body either strong against infection or helping fight the infection of the viruses. Get sunlight, get out there, get fresh air, get sunlight every day, however you can. If you got to stand in front of your window, that will affect your psyche and your health in ways that you don't quite understand until you go for a while without it. It's a great time to build new skills, like gardening, like maybe knowing the food around you, how to forage the food around you. survival skills, how to build a fire without a match or something, just in case. Not saying that it's going to go there, but if it does, you got the time to learn it, right? That keeps the mind engaged too. It keeps the mind healthy and not stagnant and dwelling on bad things. It keeps it engaged on the new stuff. That can be quite exciting and beneficial. Just be prepared. I say eat right, read, play instruments. If you don't have any, learn an instrument. If you don't, the exercise is also very important, because we'll start to deteriorate. Our muscles will go into atrophy, our lungs won't get enough oxygen, and they'll start losing their memory of what they're supposed to do. And this whole thing is about keeping the lungs at tip top. So that exercise and focusing on your breath while you're exercising really empowers the lungs.
Well, thank you all for those important tips and tricks and your point of view on the situation. Yeah. We have a long way to go here. It's looking like to me maybe 2-3 weeks of this shelter in place, and the whole world will get this under control or to a manageable situation. But it's not going to be over then. There's going to be a secondary wave in the southern hemisphere during winter, and then we'll get it back up here in the northern hemisphere in the fall, moving into winter again. Do not take the vaccine. I don't think that vaccines are the solution to this pandemic. I think that health, nutrition is the solution. But in the meantime, social distancing and trying to stay home as much as possible, learning new skills. I love what you said about wild edibles, Todd, and learning to grow your own food. Even if you're in a tiny apartment in Manhattan, you can do it on a windowsill. You could be regrowing food scraps. You could be planting some quick growing seeds like kales or other leafy greens to keep your nutrient density up and keep your immunity in tip-top shape. It's been a pleasure talking to you all. Thanks for coming on the show, and we'll talk to you all soon, and be safe.
Hey, Diamond.
Go ahead.
Diamond.
Go.
Just real quick. For all your subscribers, we're giving 15% off. Code Oppenheimer Ranch Project, ORP. Type ORP in with your order. You'll get a discount at n1oil. And I tell you, I've been out quite a few times in society as this has been going around, and I'm still not sick. So, hey.
Yeah, we're not sick here. Leah, thanks for joining us. Do you have any parting words?
Sure. No, just all of those things that Todd just suggested in terms of keeping your mind and body healthy, and your brain occupied, and don't look at the news too much. Don't obsess over it. Live your life, and that'll keep you healthy.
Live. Be prepared. Don't be scared. Learn a new skill. Get some sun and learn how to meditate. And even maybe you could start doing some yoga. Guys, thanks for coming on the show. Have a great day.
Appreciate you. Love you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Boom.